have information on it for people that whether they want it or not.
Tony ran a guard, she's at the house right now.
When we haven't made completely around yet, it just makes it
Actually talked to her before I left, but
I try to be better.
that's what that.
I try, it feels like it.
What is
So
this?
what is it, next week?
No, I'll be out of town.
They can get
I
real.
would, but I'm out of town.
We're going where? We're going West Virginia? Good for you.
I'm gonna make a public request.
CBD.
Need a break. I need a break.
It hasn't officially started yet.
Lady I work with, her daughter gives her CBD cream. She's for
not really, no. We'll see.
You look so different. I don't remember since it's been.
All right, it's 6 o'clock. I will call the Streets and Sidewalk Committee meeting to order. First item on the agenda this evening is a request to make Park Avenue no parking street on both sides. Ms. Chambers, do you just want to touch on this again real quick, please, before we,
I could.
for the reasonings and
I was just
whatnot?
telling Susie, when I left the house just a little while ago, the parking on our street was terrible. I mean, now they're parking on both sides again. I don't know, we've gotta have some kind of order on this, on the road. I don't know, the white car that's down there, that was parking 24/7 is now parking up in the driveway, so I don't know whether they got a warning letter or what, but they did move it, they're parking up in the driveway. But when I backed out of my driveway, there was a car parked here, and then there's cars that park that way, so it's back to parking on both sides. So we really need something that's going to tell them no parking, because it's getting ridiculous.
There's been some discussion, and I know some members feel that the streets are public parking. Others feel that if it happens, that it could be a nuisance or a danger. So instances like this, I know it's in committee, but we usually try to get a consensus of council before we move something like this forward.
Yeah,
Usually has to go through 3 readings and a public hearing.
There
So-
are kids that play on our road. And these
Understood.
cars, you know, they present a hazard, they present blind spots. You can't see these kids, you know, if they run out after a ball or something.
My approach has always been to try and have a civil conversation with the residents and just let them know that it's a nuisance, it's a hazard, and see if they would, you know, not do it just with a simple conversation or a letter.
We've tried that, and there's one individual that is very belligerent. He says he can park on our road.
At this point, he's correct. He
Yeah.
can, so.
Yeah, we've had the police out there several times.
And that's usually my next step is to, if it is a hazard or a problem, if they're blocking driveways or in someone else's yard, police can be called and they could ticket it, talk to them. And that has worked for us in the past where we've had situations like that. So I guess at this point, I'm still kind of torn about making it a complete no parking, but I would, you know,
Well,
Offer.
you should try to go down our street. Go down our street and see for yourself. Yeah, because right now they're parking on both sides. Yeah, and I think Susie has something. she
Yep,
wants to
please.
say too.
absolutely.
My name is Suzanne Moskin at 1036 Park Avenue. Okay, this individual that we talked about, that we're talking about, he came home from work last Wednesday at 2:30 in the afternoon. And the police was called because he was improperly parked. He moved his car in front of the house where he lives, and the car sat there until this morning, between 4 and 4:30 in the morning. So it sat there from Wednesday afternoon at 2:30 to this morning between 4 and 4:30. This car is an obstacle for UPS drivers, they have to swerve around. And like Mrs. Chambers said, if there's kids in the street and a UPS truck has to swerve around when a kid runs out to get a ball or something, they don't have time to stop because his car's parked in the street. And it's also an obstacle for other deliveries. We have people that have food delivered to their homes, and so it's an obstacle for them also. And sometimes they have to park at the end of somebody's driveway to make a delivery because he's parked on the street. And the street is not a parking lot, especially when he's been there for days and the car does not move for days. And so this is just a very important safety issue. And the police have been called numerous times, and he just says, well, I can park on the street whenever I want. So he's not approachable. Myself, I'm afraid of him because he has a temper. And so I don't want to approach him, and because I'm actually afraid of him, of what he might do. So that's why we've never approached him because I'm just afraid of him. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, thank you, and I'm not implying that the residents that live in that neighborhood would approach him. That would be something that would be done on behalf of the city.
Okay.
Mr. Salinas?
I live at 123 North Walnut Street. Walnut's at least as wide as Park Avenue, maybe wider. It's been parking on one side only as long as I can remember. I think the least you could do for these people is make it parking on one side only, so that there's always a way to get through.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to say the problem with that, this individual, then he'll change the side of the road that he parks on. And he says, well, if I can't park on this, which he's done this, he switched sides of the road for his convenience so that he doesn't have to park in the driveway and move cars periodically.
So I'm in agreement with doing one side.
Pardon?
I'm in agreement with doing one side.
It does no
But we
good.
can't, but we cannot make this about one individual. We have to make sure that we're
It's not.
focusing on the whole. I understand that, but that's what keeps being brought up as the one individual. We have to look at it as a whole, not just focus on that one person when we're looking to change an ordinance. So we need to kind of remember that.
It was suggested that if any of you want to, you can drive by and see what the problem really is. It's not just one.
I have driven by a couple times. One of the times, people were parking on both sides of the road, and it was pretty narrow to get in between, very narrow. And in other places, people are parking on the street, but they're partially in their yard too, so that they're off the street some. I do not know the solution. I'm not suggesting a solution, but there may be people on Park Avenue there that like it that there's parking on both sides of the street. And I don't know if we've heard from them about what their thoughts are. There may be people that want the parking on the street available in front of their house. So no solutions from me, but I'm just, yes, it is a tight street. When they're parking on both sides, I see that that's a real problem. I see that's a problem.
I have been very familiar with your neighborhood picnics there and have been on your street many a times. And I do know it is a very narrow street, and you come up starting from a hill and you go down, so it's not like a flat street. So there are a lot of blind spots. Every street is different, and I think you just have to look at every street with, what it presents you with. And even though I know we had on Beecher Street, and that's a much wider street, that is a no parking street on Beecher Street. And they made that, it used to be a one-side parking street, and then it was switched to no parking. But back when that was voted on, we also had told the neighbors, and I believe this goes pretty much in anywhere, depending on the situation, if like you're having an event or if you're having a birthday party or celebration, simply if we were to make the street a no parking area, you would just contact the police and ask for permission and say, hey, you know, we might have, you know, had a death in the family, we're having a birthday party, we're going to have some extra cars in the street during this time. And, you know, 9 times out of 10, I'm not speaking for the law, but in the past, I know they have made accommodations and not have gotten tickets for that. So I would be okay with making it a no parking on that street. We have made other streets no parking that are much more visible and much more accessible. And this street is, I feel, much more of a safety hazard than the streets in the past that we have made no parking.
I agree with you, Amy. I've been down several of the streets, including Park, and Park is very narrow. It's very difficult to get through there. There's a couple others within the city that make it difficult if you're trying to maneuver around and get through. And like they said, God forbid if a child would run out. I would be in favor of no parking on Park or at least one side limited.
I wanted to follow up real quickly about something Dr. Calfee said. And I drove through, and Bob, one of the things I noticed, there were 2 cars that I would say were parking on the tree lawn, if there even is one, because there's no sidewalks there. And one of them looked like it was like that for a long time. You could see that there was gravel or something worn away there. So I just wonder if that's a side effect of no parking, that people will start parking on the, what you consider the tree lawn, and that's a whole other parking issue. And I just want to know, do you know of any, I think you've said in the past, nobody's ever asked for that permit anywhere in the city, so I assume nobody in that street is asked to do that.
Dawn from my office has been handling that.
Okay.
I haven't been involved. I'd have to talk to Dawn about it. We have several requests for parking. As he continues to issue violations, parking on the tree lawn, we continue to see these issues. As many of you know, single car garage, single wide driveway.
It's
How
an
many
old-
of us have 1 car in our driveway? Probably none of us. So, or even 2 cars in the driveway. So before you know it, there's 4 cars and there's no room to park. So that's the dilemma that we face on a regular basis.
Yeah, well, it might be, it could be a solution, I don't know. I mean,
Correct, it could be a solution.
I know when we've had our block parties, the city's been very accommodating with blocking off our road. But, you know, I let them know that we're having a block party for that day, and we block it, they give me the road closed signs, and we put them at the end of the roads. They've been very accommodating with that. But we have to let the city know.
Ms. Miller?
My name is Cynthia Miller. I live at 727 East Main Street. My husband and I were curious and drove down Park Street. It is quite congested with parking on both sides of the street. As a matter of fact, several people park with the back end of their car in their grass and the front end of their car out into the street. I'm not sure why. I found out today, somebody had mentioned that the tax portion of your bill that pays for city streets also pays for sidewalks. It covers in there, that's actually covered as well in the tax money. Park does not have a sidewalk, so everybody paying income tax on Park is also paying for a sidewalk that they're not getting. Surely the city has enough money to make this no parking on either side as a consideration. They should have a sidewalk paid for and installed. They do not. At least let them have no parking on either side.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion amongst council? So I think what we'll do is, at this point, we'll go ahead and move this forward to committee of the whole. And we'll vote at that point and go from there. So at this point, we'll go ahead and move this item forward for no parking on both sides on Park Avenue. Next item,
Matt, I'm sorry, I have a question. Would a change of that extent require a public meeting?
it will.
Okay, it will.
It'll, yeah, public hearing.
Public hearing.
And 3 readings.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Next item, the salt. The SALT consortium to allow other entities to use our salt supply. We do this every year. This year, the agreement will be with the township, the Ravenna School District, Village of Manaway, PMHA, and Maplewood Career Center. What they do is they come to Ravenna, they load their trucks, they weigh coming in, they load their trucks with salt, they weigh going out, and they're billed based on the amount of salt used. Is it monthly, or is it
It's at the end of the season.
just one time at the end of the
Yes.
season? So I believe we charge them state pricing for the salt. And we've done this for years, so is there any objection this year to doing that again?
Nope, move it forward.
Okay, we'll move that item forward as well. The next item we have on is a lift system purchase for the street garage. I'm trying to figure out if this was put in this year as a mistake. It might have been appropriated for the 25 budget.
I did just look, I think it is in the 2024 budget, but I'd like to look at the funds, because it says allocated 4 ways, and make sure before I say for sure and talk to Jason.
Okay, so there's some questions still on this purchase. It's basically a lift to lift all the heavy equipment, vehicles at the street garage. This lift will be powerful enough to even lift the fire engines, I believe.
Yes.
For work, cleaning, oil changes, maintenance. From talking to Jason, it's much needed and long overdue. It'll help the life of the vehicles and the employees working on them. So I think we're going to table this though this evening because just the way the funding is setting up, it was supposed to be a split between a couple different entities, and I don't know if it was listed that way. All those funds that are listed, Tammy, water, sewer, general, all
That
those?
would be the 4-way split, yes.
Okay,
I want to check what's already encumbered. I was looking at some of the funds, and I haven't had a chance to verify that what's left is truly what is needed for the cost of the lift.
so would you be okay actually with us moving this
We can
forward?
move it forward, and I'll just verify with Jason
Verify.
if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah, I would be okay with that. If
Me too.
Committee is,
Yes.
Paul?
Yes, after she finds out some more info.
Yeah, I can let you know.
Okay, so
thank
we
you.
will not table this. We will move this item forward for further discussion, but we'll go ahead and move that item forward as well. Next item is the signal at King and Main Street. As everyone knows, there's been a lot of conversation about that intersection. That light is unwarranted by the state. It's flashing now. Seems like traffic's been flowing through there really well since it's been on flash. I've kind of been looking every time I go through to see if there's backups or problems on King. At most, I've seen 2 cars waiting, but it's usually at the busy times of the day. Most times, it's just a nice, smooth flow. The concern is the traffic crossing Main Street there, pedestrian traffic crossing Main Street there. We talked about possibly the crossover beacon that would stop traffic, but in order to do that, it would need to be moved from the intersection east or west, I'm sorry, closer to West Main, the front of West Main School, which really does not make a lot of sense because you'd have a stop beacon for pedestrian crossings and about 150 yards down the road, we'd have a traffic light. I think that could be troublesome and cause some confusion and problems.
May I say something about that?
Yes, Ms. Chambers.
I used to work at West Main School.
You need to move to the microphone to record. Thank you.
I used to work at West Main School, and a lot of students use that crossing to come to school and leave the school. If, I don't know whether you're thinking of doing away with that light or not, but I would suggest that you leave the light there, but leave it on blinker when there's no school, and leave it so it can be, the kids can cross there when the school's in session.
The problem with that light right now is it's not working properly. And it doesn't work in conjunction with all our other new signals that have been put up. I've taught, it would be a very expensive fix. I've talked to the school, I've talked to the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, the new superintendent, and not one of them has been adamant that that light stays. They are okay with sending the children that need to cross Main Street to Diamond Street to cross where there's a cross guard. I've had a couple conversations with them in regard to that. Kind of to my surprise, they were okay with that light coming out since it wasn't warranted. And the cost, obviously they at this point in time, they understand the cost of fixing things and doing business with the situation they're in, so.
So in inclement weather, you want the kids to walk up to Diamond Street. You want them to walk in the rain and in the snow. You want them to walk further instead of crossing where they can.
I don't know where every one of those kids live. I can't say that.
Most of them.
There
live
was
on
a
the
study done on how many kids cross that road during the school year. I'll be happy to share it with you so you can see it's very minimal. I think the impact would be very low. And our ultimate goal is to keep those children safe. We have a crossing guard at Diamond in Maine. We don't have one at King in Maine. I think the smart thing to do would be to have them cross with a crossing guard. Most of the parents are across the street waiting for them in cars anyway, that do cross. A lot of times the parents cross the road, get their kids and walk back with them. Financially, we would still put, we'd look at putting rectangle pedestrian signs with the bright yellow flashing LED lights. You guys have probably seen them in neighboring communities. I don't want to say they're obnoxious, but they do get your attention. They'll only be activated when a pedestrian is trying to cross, whether it's a child or an adult. And I think that is the most logic way to go at this point.
I just wanted to voice my concern.
I appreciate that, thank you. We've been talking about this for about 6 months, there's been a lot of discussion.
Yeah.
And obviously, the ultimate goal is to keep everyone safe.
Yeah, I agree.
With that traffic light not being warranted, again, I personally have been watching that intersection. And all the times I've been there, I've not personally seen anyone trying to cross that road at that point. I know they do, just hasn't been there, they haven't been crossing when I've been there.
They do more when school's in session.
When school is in session, right.
Okay,
But
thank
the
you.
school was in favor of working with the parents, sending letters out to the ones that do walk and requesting that they go to Diamond in Maine where there is a crossing guard. So,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome, thank you. So, anybody else in the committee have a different opinion on the signage or the light or anything that they feel should be at that intersection, other than the pedestrian crossing beacon?
I'm in agreement, Matt.
And I know this is eventually going to come before everybody, so if anybody else has a feeling on it, please.
I agree with you with the the kind of intermediate light that we were looking at that would go red and stop traffic, it had to move so far up Main Street, as you said, west toward the school, it became redundant. So
Right.
I agree that the flashing pedestrian symbol, that bright flashing white light, would be the best solution for it. So I'm in favor of it.
And with that one, the crosswalk would stay
At the corner.
right at the corner and would cross Main and King.
Everyone knows where I stand on this, and I've stood on this decision for all the years that I've been on council. When it came up before, I was a strong no vote on it, and I believe the last council I was with stopped it from happening. So I will still stick with that. I don't agree with it. I have seen people try to cross there. I was just saying this last weekend, I saw a little boy on the bike on King Street, and I saw a person in a wheelchair coming out of Gardens, or Avon Court, actually. And so people do use it, not just during school hours, and that area is heavily used a lot, I feel, with maybe kids that are not being supervised. And I think that there's a lot of crossing to get to the dollar store across the street. You have a lot of younger kids that are trying to get across the street. So I am very concerned. I'm also concerned about the speed going now between the two lights, because you're not going to have a breakup between that. So I am also concerned about the increased speed that you're going to see within that runway of the lights going from light to light. So I know my vote is not going to change things, but I know on my conscience, I am voting no on this, so everyone knows.
Yeah, and since the
Matt.
light is not warranted, we, we are not allowed by law to use signals or stop signs to control the flow of traffic.
I don't think that's true. If there's a school there, you don't have to have that. Doesn't make that have to work with the study if you have a school there. But that's, I guess, a discussion from another
So
time.
the engineer did study the school zone, and it was not warranted based on the pedestrians. The way, before the signal went to flash, well, start over again. The reason we're discussing this, for a couple reasons. One is we plan on widening the street. We have to relocate those traffic signals. If we're going to relocate those traffic signals, now is the time to make a change. We're either going to spend $150,000 or $170,000 to renew that whole intersection, or we could take the lesser approach, still protect the pedestrians with a crossing light, as we are discussing now. It's going to function just like a traffic light. It has the same law as a traffic light does. The other thing I wanted to say is the way I have that signal adjusted, when it was functioning for a few years, is it was always green on Main Street until a car pulled up on King Street. So if a pedestrian wanted to cross, they still had to push the pedestrian button to change the light, which is exactly what we're talking about with the ad hoc signal crossing. They'll push the button. A car on King Street doesn't have to change it. Pedestrian pushes a button, it stops traffic, and they can cross, whether it's mid-block, whether it's at King Street, or wherever.
I thought the ad hoc signal had to be moved west.
Well, that's the, yeah, that's the recommendation by the engineer, correct. And that's so the vehicles on King Street could make a left-hand turn and have a place to stop before they get to the crosswalk. That was the reason they slid it down, and then Avon Court is right there also.
And with moving it west, those couple hundred feet, they were still okay with the signal at Diamond being so close?
Yes. And again, as the study stated, many of those children came out of the school and then headed south on King Street. They didn't even cross King Street. But, you know, they studied that a couple of days worth of pedestrian traffic, and maybe the children were sick or something that day. We don't know.
I know the people that did the study talked to the administration at that elementary school and was part of their study and their survey. It says it right in the survey that they talked to the individuals.
The people there, I mean, it's people that live in that area too, and not just the kids in the school. So, I mean, there are kids that might live in that area that maybe don't go to that school, might go to one of the other schools, but.
Lou Dudak, 704 East Main Street. There's going to be a mini mart where there used to be a hairdresser. And I think the mini mart's going to create some traffic and issues. And shutting down the light may not be the most appropriate thing. Because you're going to have people going in and out of there, plus you have children, more activity going across the street to get to the mini mart. And maybe when those studies were done, there wasn't as much traffic because it was a beauty salon.
And we did talk about that as a council, the possible addition of that corner lot becoming a mini mart. So we have discussed that and the possible influx in traffic as well.
Because you got delivery trucks and everything gonna go there.
At that point.
So are we clear about what exactly, because I thought what was about to be moved forward was something different than what Bob was describing.
Yeah, the, now I've got it mixed up. The beacon, which would cross all 4 lanes, 1 post from each side, would have, a yellow flashing light to a solid red light that would require traffic to stop by law to allow pedestrians to cross.
It would have to be moved.
It would have to be moved west. Bob, did the survey say how far? Was, what, 200 feet? I guess, would that push the beacon past the entrance of West Main off of, the entrance they have off of Main Street? It'd be awful close.
Yeah.
Just from my perspective, I think the idea of whether or not the light should remain might be the subject, of when the ordinance gets passed forward and the public hearing and all that. But I think we need clarity at this point, what exactly the committee is going to move forward. Because it sounds like initially there was one idea at the current location of the light, and now Mr. Finney's talking about another alternative that was discussed previously, but that would have to be moved. So I think the committee has to make a choice to move one of those 2 things forward.
Yeah, originally, the committee was going to move forward the signal beacon until we found out that it would have to be moved west to the middle of towards the front of the school. We felt possibly the beacon, and then you'd have 100 yards and you'd have a traffic light would, as Mr. Calfee said, a little redundant with traffic flow and whatnot. When that was presented, committee was considering going to the flashing signs. We did not have I didn't see the information that the study recommended the beacon, even though it was being moved. I think he's trying to find that information now.
Just trying to kill time while he looks it up.
Norman, you have a comment?
Carmen Lodato, 222 Madison Street. I just want to add some type of perspective. Ravenna has been failing these levies, and when I've lived in other communities, when busing is cut, because that is the largest line item, they'll cut transportation, or it affects classrooms, you are going to have a lot more kids that are going to be walking when things go to state minimums. So that's something to consider. Observing a 2-day pattern, I don't know how that could be indicative of a pattern. That's just you'd have to observe for longer than that. I did a sidewalks grant in another city, and we had to do observations for a week. So 2 days is just not enough. But like I said, you will have a lot more kids that are gonna be walking, and I think it's important to prioritize pedestrians and not prioritize automobiles. That's it.
Thank you.
We have another comment.
This is what the engineer had sent to me when, after our last meeting, so this was June 11th. It was discussed how far away from the intersection. The manual, Ohio Manual Uniform Traffic Control Devices state that the PHBs should be located at least 100 feet from side streets controlled by a stop sign. This allows traffic from the side street to turn onto the major road and see the PHB. My suggestion would be to install a 200-foot west of the current crosswalk to be west of the school driveway. Buses coming from the east wouldn't have to stop. They'd be turning into the school. Location is approximately 370 feet east of Diamond, so eastbound traffic would have plenty of space to queue without backing up into the intersection. So this is Diamond, trying to use my finger to show you that doesn't work. This is Diamond Street here. So if we went with the ad hoc signal, which is the 3 beacons turned sideways, the recommendation would be to put it basically in front of the school, at the corner of the school.
So but if you did the signs, the big bright obnoxious yellow, safety yellow with the flashers, would that also have to be moved?
those we
Or
just-
that could be at the
We
intersection?
would just put those at the
Okay.
intersection, and then King Street would have a stop sign. Which, that is the least expensive. I know we're not talking about money, but that is a discussion.
So there'd still be a crosswalk there for pedestrians to use there,
Absolutely.
but no light for car traffic?
Correct.
Okay.
And that, those would not, traffic, when a pedestrian is in a signalized crosswalk, traffic is required to stop. That is the law. It's not a suggestion that they stop for pedestrians. They have to stop for pedestrians.
Are they not required to stop regardless?
I mean, they are, yeah, that's true, they are.
Okay.
If it's not signed, they're a lot harder to see, especially at night. We have most of ours signed, but not all of them.
And you see on Main and Parkway, there's a lot of people that cross Main Street there, and they just have that small sign usually sitting in the middle of the road that the law is to stop for pedestrians in the crosswalk. There's no flashing lights, there's no pedestrian bright yellow signs, and I don't know that we've had any issues up there that I'm aware of. I know it's not right next to a school, but I think there's more pedestrian traffic crossing right there than we would have at King and Main.
So the PHB is a pedestrian hybrid beacon, and that's with a triangular shaped, that's what this is showing now, which would be in front of the school.
In front of the school.
Yeah, there is a lot more traffic right over here at this intersection, but people are, for the most part, moving much slower in their vehicles.
The intersections are in essence 200 feet apart from Chestnut to Meridian. At that crosswalk, it's only 200 feet each direction. Maybe 400, maybe it is 400 feet, but you get the idea. It is a lot shorter than, and it is 35 miles an hour at that stretch on West Main Street. Downtown is 25.
Cliff, did you have something to add?
So this is the other type of crosswalk. So with this case, just the little light here would be flashing. We could align these to have lights around the perimeter of this. Have this flashing and then lights around the sign flashing also.
There's several of those down by Kent State.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Legally, they have to.
Yeah, they legally have. People uptown don't stop when they're only going 25 miles an hour trying to cross between
Who
Main
has the
Street
floor?
and Parkway.
Does anybody know who the?
Cliff,
floor-
go ahead, please.
Okay. Remember that we paid tax money to have a study about the light on Main Street. The young lady came to our meeting here and told us that it was not warranted. Okay, so we need to drop that out completely, because by putting a light there, we would be liable if it caused a problem, because it's not a warranted light. Okay, so your real probably question here is, do you want to use what you're talking about or the other one with the red? Those are the two things that you need to move forward or talk about. Not spending up to $200,000 for another light. So just remember that that was what they told us what they needed to do. We needed to do here. You can't put that light up because it's not warranted.
I think
Like many lights and stop signs in our town aren't warranted, not legally warranted.
Thanks, Cliff. How's the committee feel at this point? I still struggle with moving that beacon. I think the beacon is the way to go. I would like to see it at the intersection, but.
But without it being feasible and having to be moved down.
Didn't we talk about doing one of those arms that would go across King as well? Instead of just Main, if we kept it at that intersection? To actually stop traffic on King before the traffic got out onto Main?
At the intersection.
We did. I'm trying to recall if I posed the question to the engineer and if I got an answer. I'm not recalling that I received an answer, but I know we discussed it.
So are you saying to put a crosswalk this way and a crosswalk this way?
Instead of just having one on each side of Main Street.
Yeah.
Have one
Across
that
King.
go across Main Street at that intersection on both sides, and then have an arm that also goes across King that would be connected, and if the button was pushed, that everything would stop. In all
Yeah, that
all
makes
directions.
sense.
So the email does go on to say, I'm not exactly sure what you're asking about the third light. Where it is, if you mean using this to stop on both King and Main. I would not suggest that. King street traffic is controlled by a stop sign, and adding the beacons would just confuse things. I could forward this email to you guys too, if you'd like.
I suppose you could move forward with one of those two alternatives, and we can wait a couple of weeks at the committee of the whole and make a final determination what to put on the agenda for the August meeting, because I'm not sensing a consensus about one of the two alternatives, but unless you have another suggestion.
No, at this point, again, my recommendation was the beacon until it had to be moved. I just don't see it being practical, being right in front of the school. It'll be 200 feet from another crossing. It just, it really, they come out of the entrance and they could go this way 200 to cross, or 200 this way to cross, or 100 feet, whatever it ends up being. I would still like to see the children go to the crossing guard where there's an adult there to help them cross. I don't know that we need to stop traffic in both spots that close together. It just doesn't make sense to me. One of the things that I keep going back to is the conversation with the school district administrators over this concern. They were okay with not having there at that point, but being a little overcautious, I thought it would still be a good idea until it had to be moved. Being moved, I was, coming into tonight's meeting, I was leaning towards the recommendation of the rectangle pedestrian crossing signs with the bright flashing lights kept at that intersection.
You're referring to these, Matt?
Correct.
Yeah. Wait, do you want to just move that forward? I mean, I get you, the committee?
And
We
then
need to
I would like to, if the committee's okay with that, I would like to move that forward at this time. And I would like maybe a little more research or conversation done with the people that did the survey about a beacon arm that would go across King and why they think that would be confusing. I can understand why, because you have a stop sign and you have a red light, you have no light. But I would just maybe like to hear a little more feedback on that from them.
I believe we need to choose what is going to be the safest for any pedestrian, no matter what age the individual might be.
Please.
So, in light of a couple things, I feel like if the school district's levy had passed, again, busing would be a more sustainable option for that. So I feel that there is an increased risk of more kids being on, taking advantage of being foot traffic to get home. And if we do have increased economic activity in terms of a possible mini mart, again, foot traffic, I've seen a lot of people of all ages just hoof it down to, the corner store. So I could see more traffic around, foot traffic on that side as well. I'm not sure what the best outcome is for which specific method we should use to control traffic and increase safety for pedestrians. I do feel that that'd be a good investment for our community because we're probably going to have more people walking, especially with all the events downtown and limited parking. So I feel more people from the community be likely to walk downtown as well. And if they have to cross the street, do it where it's safe to do so.
If we did go with a hybrid beacon, it wouldn't be at that intersection where everybody thinks there'll be additional traffic because of the possible mini mart. The traffic would be stopping way down in front of the school. It wouldn't even affect the traffic really at that intersection if we moved it 200 feet to the west in front of the school. It's really going to have no bearing on that intersection with vehicle traffic stopping. So.
I think it's fair to say that what's up being displayed, because it's on that intersection, might be a more holistic solution. Moving it and creating that other alternative might be a better solution with concern to the school, since it would be a crossing right in front of the school. Would that be a fair comparison?
Yeah, but if you move that right in front of the school, you go just a
I
few
know.
steps more and you got a crosswalk with a guard, so.
Yeah, I don't think that makes sense at all. And
that's
I'm not an engineer, but common sense is like that needs to be, if you're going to have a contraption like that, that needs to be also with the consideration of the people that live on Avon Court as well, in that area, because people try to cross and there's an area there to walk.
That's why I was making the
Yeah,
comparison.
you
that
can't.
This is on that that intersection at least.
I have a question, or for Bob. So let's say we did put this in at the intersection. It's the cheapest alternative. We put it in, it's not working out, and we want to upgrade it and do something differently or change something out. We can use this equipment elsewhere in the city, correct?
Yes.
I did talk to a few people about that as well, being this is the less intrusive, less aggressive way to go.
Yeah.
We can monitor it, and if there's problems,
Absolutely.
we can go back and readdress it at that time. So if the committee's okay with it, I would like to go ahead and move forward with the rectangular flashing, make sure they have the flashing beacons at that intersection at this time. Move that on to committee of the whole. Paul, you okay with that?
I'll just say okay, and that's it.
Okay.
Okay doesn't get me real far.
That's all that's required.
Ms. What?
Yes, I'm okay with that. I would also like to see the outlined LED lights around the outside of the sign like they have over in Kent. I think it brings a lot more attention to it when
You
the
have to get
pedestrian
something that's
button
gonna
is pushed.
grab everyone's attention, or they're not gonna notice.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and move that item forward at this time. Management update on anything? Streets and sidewalks?
Well, right now, we have one more layer to put on the Main Street. I think that's coming soon. Bob, is their target still to be out here by July 31st?
They're to start paving next Monday, I believe. Was it the 22nd or the 15th? No, it was the
Yeah,
22nd. The following, in 2 weeks, they were going to start paving. They're going to pave at night, and it should be less than a week's worth. However, they have to adjust all the steel castings in the road, so that might take them longer than the end of the month.
Okay.
So their delay is not being able to get the asphalt that ODOT specified. So they had to go to an alternative asphalt. And evidently that's taken 3 weeks to figure that out.
Well, I would like to say thank you to Bob, if I could, for making sure our residents are safe. I'm very disappointed with the way ODOT left the curbs on our main intersection there on Chestnut and Main. I know, as I told people last week, I took a pretty hard fall on the corner, and they did not mark the area correct at all. And there's quite a big lift in that area. So if you are out there and you're walking, please be careful. But now Bob did go out and he highlighted those areas where there was a nice big lift there. And, but yeah, it could be quite detrimental to our pedestrians. So I was pretty disappointed with ODOT. Thank you.
It is 6:52. I will adjourn the Streets and Sidewalks Committee meeting.
All right, 6:52, I'll start the utility. And there's just one quick thing on this agenda. Tax assessments for delinquent utilities, delinquent for property maintenance care, and rentals. The utility is for be delinquent water bills. Property maintenance, it could be things such as tall grass that's been neglected and notices, fines that aren't paid, rental fees that are, just say neglected, things of that nature. If anyone wants further information, it could be broken down more if needed, but those are the things that this covers. It will actually go on the owners.
I just had a question, Paul, and I don't see that we have a list of broken down. Do we have any of the rentals that are out there? Do we have a pattern of like certain rentals that are known that are not paying, their taxes, their delinquents? As far as like, do we see a pattern of assessing as far as the grass and stuff like that when they're, like applying for permits and stuff? Are we able to be like more aggressive with them anyway? Are these, by seeing some of the stuff that is coming through, is it helping us to maybe enforce a little bit more in some of our rentals that might be a problem in the neighborhoods?
I have not seen the lists, and I do not track that
And
data
sadly,
right
it's
now.
owner occupied just as much as rentals on these. But I do agree.
I was just
where you're coming
curious.
from, if there was a way to restrict it.
Yes, these lists tend to come from, part of it comes from building and engineering, part of it comes from water utility. There's different people that are responsible for each one of these lists that we assess, so I can look into it a little more.
Yeah, it's okay. I was just curious. I didn't see a list with us,
Top
so,
of my head how the trends.
yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thank you.
No, you're right, there has been a list in the past years, broken down of the addresses, and if not mistaken, the amounts that is
Yes.
owed for each
Yes, Mike Reynolds
infraction.
is on vacation and he usually provides the water utility and kind of pulls this all together for us and takes it to the county. So I'm sure he will have that before next meeting.
And you'll get copies of.
Okay, thank you.
I'm
Well-
okay with moving it forward.
So am I.
All right, great, that was quick. Utilities, management,
We're good.
oh, okay. All right, I will end this at 6:55.
And I will call the planning committee meeting to order at 6:55 PM. The first item on the agenda is the Parks and Recreation new building update. You guys all good to go? Okay.
We do have a handout. I'm Sean Thompson from TMA Architects. Alex Kelly is with me.
Yeah, that's,
Good.
not sure if that'll be enough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does he have to book the- Okay.
Have a accompanying PowerPoint. So just real quick, so what you're looking at in front of you, the handout, it just has a slightly different,
We're not getting your laptop.
Is there a bad connection, or?
hold on.
You might have to change your display settings, right?
Is there a way to change the input to this?
She does that.
Yeah.
What kind of port are you plugging it into?
It's in the HDMI.
Oh, okay. Bob's work, but his doesn't.
Yeah, you can take mine if you want.
Oh, yeah, do that.
The IT guy figured it
Oh, wait a second, we might have it. Can you move it over? There it is.
There you
Is
go.
that you?
Yep.
Ah, okay.
Judy, that's gonna be a great location.
That's the part that's going.
What?
It's Crystal Lake right there.
What a rec center.
Big curtain.
So duplicate on 1 and 3.
Okay.
Changes, we can minimize that.
Might not work tomorrow, Sean, but work tonight.
I'll just call him back.
Good job.
Except, hold on, so that's.
The site.
That's what I'm gonna do, I wanna change it in
Yeah,
PowerPoint
so-
to project. Screen. There's that.
This one.
Like the lake in the mountains.
Yeah.
do is you still want 1 and 3, because otherwise it's not pushing out to the display. Then, over here, keep that change. You go back to your PowerPoint here. So, go there, and then when you go to do it, it should be good.
I was just told that we can't see council, people watching now.
No, you can only see what's on the screen.
It's black, yeah.
Yeah. So those that are watching online, just be patient while we work through our technical
Better
difficulties.
behave.
You have notes in presenter view? Okay. So, primary one here, so we're not seeing that right now.
So mine was just a PDF, it wasn't PowerPoint.
And then, go over here, maximize that, leave it on the primary one here, and just from the beginning. Okay, there we go. Take it away.
All right. Councilman/IT.
All right.
A little bit of everything.
Thank you for your patience. So you have in front of you is a little different than the PowerPoint. Same images, it's just a little more verbiage and explanation. The slideshow is kind of the pared down version of it. And then you'll see, we start with an executive summary. We're going to skip that. We'll hit that in the end in the presentation. But we were engaged in like mid to late April to look at a rec center. Specifically, we started looking at what's the ability to put a rec center on the same site, the old school site where we were looking at the safety center and the city hall project. So from that, Judy was able to give us a really nice, good sketch of some things that she had thought about visiting other rec centers and things that she had, her and her staff had thought about in terms of what the Parks Department needed. And so we started with that. What's built here is a program analysis. So these are the spaces, you can see the highlights. We have about 1,100 square feet of administrative space. The bulk of the space is recreation space, 16,290 square feet, and then support space, which is mostly storage and things of that sort, 2,600. So we feel that's a really good blend. There's definitely a focus on the recreation space. This program evolved as we also looked at layouts. Also, at the same time that she gave, this is the sketch that Judy gave us, was around centrally located courts, trying to have a sort of grand entry into the building, and then this desire for multiple studio-type spaces. Spaces that could be divided up, we could do small classes, slightly larger classes, but really the ability to do a lot of activities kind of going on at the same time in their own distinguished spaces. So we started with this layout. So we looked at two initial concepts. Again, this is on the original site. So if you look down in this corner, this is the edge of the safety center. So this is the fire department end of that. These are the apparatus bays. This was the parking that was assigned to that project. So we basically maximized out the rest of the site. That would include purchasing or acquiring the two properties on the corner. As you can see, this really is packed in there. The building footprint, this white rectangle, fills the site. We actually don't even have enough parking based on your zoning code and even based on what Parks said that they would like to have. There really would be no place for any outdoor play activities. So we were like, all right, so that's clearly not the right approach. So we looked at a second version, concept B, and what if we took some of the program space? So I'll toggle back and forth. If you look on this floor plan to the left, all one floor, The thought was to take this band of space that was along the one side and look at a two-story option, because we thought we could reduce the footprint of the building enough in doing that. So essentially, this piece up here that you're seeing at the top of the screen would stack over all of this space at the bottom. Those are spaces that only need one floor. They're not high, it's not basketball, volleyball kind of space. And you can see from the site plan, that did reduce the amount of site that we needed. We still don't get enough parking, and just the size of the building to what's left. We have a little bit of outdoor play space, but it's really right on the driveway in for the fire department. We kind of very quickly realized that this was not the best site for the building at the size that the Parks Department was looking for. So, from there, we decided to look at 4 other locations. And if you open this, these should be on a 2-page spread. So we looked at 4 locations, the first of those being the Osborne Park, just down here on the west side of town. Very similar to the safety center site. It's very tight. In fact, you'd also have to acquire the swath that comes through from the railroad, but you can kind of see with any outdoor courts, outdoor volleyball, outdoor basketball, parking, the building and the hatch, this is really shoehorned in there. So that one was a very quick kind of study. One thing to keep in mind with all of these 4 that we looked at on all 4 parks are the areas of all of these items are the same. So as you look from option to option, we kept the same size building on each of the parks. We didn't vary the size of the building to make it fit the park necessarily. This was based on that program early on and that 26,000 square feet. We also looked at Havers Woods Park. Actually, plenty of land. The building could fit in that northeast corner. One of the benefits, there is a nice big parking lot. There are ball fields that this would work in conjunction with. The only real downside to this is it's a little bit off the beaten path. And part of the idea, I know, of looking at the original site was something downtown, something that would have pedestrian access, something that would be readily accessible. We looked at City Park. In this case, we were looking at the top of the hill. So you've got the building here on the north side of the drive. We could expand parking if we needed to, although there's a decent amount of parking there. Plenty of room for basketball courts. There's actually existing basketball courts, and plenty of room for the rest of the facilities that we were talking about. The other nice part about City Park is the site slopes from the driveway to the north. So our 2-story scheme that we liked from the original concept to be, we could make work, and we could do it so that both floors exit out to grade. So you could spill out from the basketball court out into the park to the north. And then to show you kind of what that looked like, this is how that building layout kind of laid out on City Park. We had an entrance in the southeast corner. You kind of came in, there was a nice dramatic view down into the court area. We had Nautilus and weight equipment stacked on the side, and then some locker rooms. And then this also had a large, so we had our basketball, but we also had a large multi-purpose room in this area. This one did both City Park and then this last one, Chestnut Hills. Again, similar to City Park in that the site slopes, so our 2-story scheme can be nestled into the hillside. Plenty of room for ball fields. There is some existing parking here as well that we can reuse. And also, this one has the benefit of the easy access to the local trails. The spur off the bike trail comes into the park in the southeast corner. Basically, after looking at those 4 parks, it became clear, I think, to everybody that City Park and Chestnut Hills were the 2 that we wanted to look at in more detail, hence why we did a more detailed layout that was specific to City Park. And then we did the same thing at Chestnut Hills, In fact, we looked at 2 options there again, just because we had a little more flexibility with the site. You've got the same split level layout. You have your large gym space, your volleyball and basketball, and then a large multi-purpose room on the lower level. And then you've got your single-story space kind of wrapped around that. And like I said, we looked at 2 options of that, just kind of different layouts. This one had a large court and then smaller multi-purpose rooms down the side. The thought was really that option 1 was the better option. And so that takes us back to our kind of where we started, the executive summary. So basically the second page is in yours. So the final concept that we are kind of presenting is a 2-story split level layout with the multiple large courts, doing this and doing it at Chestnut Hills. It really boiled down the really significant difference between doing it at Chestnut Hills and City Park was if we do it at City Park, we would have to take down trees to actually make this building a reality. And the thought was that seemed to kind of go in opposition to what the Parks Department and that sort of stands for. And so we kind of ended up at the Chestnut Hills piece. And then quick budget breakdown. We're looking right now, hard cost construction site work. This would be if you were to, dive right into a design and construction project to try to bid next year. You're looking about 8.8 million of hard costs, soft costs. And again, soft costs could vary depending on what equipment and furniture. There's a lot of existing equipment, things that could be reused. But looking at right now, a total project cost of just under 10 million. And this is based on 2025. There's a 9 missing on my PowerPoint, but there's based on pricing, there's construction escalation. So as you look out, figure a 7 to 9% increase right now is about what we've been seeing on construction prices year to year. So any questions?
Ever thought about tearing down the armory and putting it on that site on Freedom Street? Is that where it's currently now, or would that cost obviously more money? I didn't know if that was an option.
We did not look at that option, but it certainly would be. I think there would be some additional cost to
Probably.
demolishing the existing building.
I didn't know if it was
rebuild.
big enough, if that, what you guys were, just an idea.
No, that's a good question. We kind of did push that aside, and also the other challenge to that is the continuity piece. So if you demolish the building and build back in its place, there's a period of time, probably 18 months or so, that you are then
Without a
Sans
place.
Recreation Center. So
Yeah.
What was the parking need when you were first talking about the first parcel we were looking at? It's like how many spots are required for that?
The RAC currently has 137, I believe, for the whole engineering, building, parks, utility billing.
Yeah, so it's a little hard to read, but in this version, we were able to get 45 spots. Zoning requires 122, and I think, and Judy can answer this as well, I think when she started looking at what is used currently, I think we targeted about 80 cars. Yeah.
Right, because we have to take into account that we're going to then have basketball and other activities going on, so we have to accommodate those extra people in the space.
Yeah, you're cutting from the same square footage budget, I get that, so, yeah.
And then to kind of tack on, Amy, to what you were saying, at Chestnut Hills, kind of a long-term vision then would to be in that multi-purpose room, to be able to accommodate like concerts or outdoor activities, and to have like a sports complex out there too. So we're kind of stuck on Freedom Street. We wouldn't be able to do those sorts of things, so.
I know Judy, at the Parks and Rec meeting, when you showed us all the renderings, that was one of the things that we all talked about, that this gives it gives room to grow, but it also gives room to do things like to have locker rooms that open from the outside that you can walk in. So when you're there playing soccer, when you're there at the playground, you know, there's stuff to do. So it kind of like pulls it together. So it was kind of a blessing that it didn't fit on the safety center lot, because we're able to really utilize the space that's around there and attract more people to come there. Yeah.
So how much money is already set aside, just to start with?
Well,
We don't have money actually set aside.
Oh.
Sarah, what do you have in your pocket, Paul?
it was nothing specifically.
There's
like,
nothing
this is what we want.
specifically designated as, set aside for.
But I know we are much more financially sound in capital improvements than we had been even 5 years ago. So it's something that I would like to develop, like a long-range plan, like the 5-year plan that they've had for other.
There is a possibility we could support some of a payment for it. I don't know if we could come close to a 10 million, what we're looking at here, but
That's what I was referring to, having, I don't know if you're planning on having a certain amount up front before it started, or what kind of plan there is.
I think the whole purpose was just kind of get an idea of what really they were looking for and what their needs were.
Oh,
To
yes.
kind of determine, you know, okay, great, $10 million, what's our next step? So it was really just to kind of get it on paper and see what it was going to look like.
Well, yes, but I mean, I don't have anything against the plan, but then the financial end.
that would be next step, Paul, figuring that
Part of the
part of it
plan.
out.
Okay, I didn't know if part of that was already thought of.
Does anybody else have any questions?
I think it looks very nice, and I'm excited to hopefully see this in our lifetime. You know, that would be a good goal, seeing all the new buildings come together, you know, sooner than later. So one thing nice is Parks and Rec is under different than the safety buildings. You know, the funding sources are different. So I don't know how that would, you know, be conflicting between the two on planning. So I don't think it would be too much of a conflict.
Correct. And I don't know what the possibility is also of seeking private donations and going, you know, asking.
Absolutely.
Asking.
Yeah.
Worst they could do is tell you no.
That's right. Or pass the hat.
Absolutely.
All right, does anybody else have any questions?
No, they're
Nice job.
beautiful.
Thank you guys.
So what's your,
I would like to really thank these guys, because I know, you know, they put a lot of time and effort into it, and Alex, too, I do give him like a lot of kudos, like, wow, like, I've been like in this industry for a long time, and I never thought of that, so I really appreciate your time.
If we do have some follow-up questions, can you leave your contact information so we could reach out to you?
Yeah, sure. How do I do it? I mean, Bob's got it and Judy's got it.
You can always email Chelsea too, or Bob can email Chelsea to.
I'll ask you, thank you.
Oh, did you have some-
Forwarded PowerPoint.
Okay, appreciate that. I already have it, thank you.
so would this be a conflict with that building, with the other buildings being started?
Not necessarily.
No, okay, that was just my concern.
But probably,
Pardon?
but probably.
That's,
Well, it depends on how many donations Judy can get. I'm feeling optimistic.
Well, let me tell you about the school complex.
That's got to be a priority.
It was gonna be all donated money.
Yeah.
Back then, it was $7 million. That's a long time ago. They raised $1 million. So the board had to find another way to pay for it.
I think that's something,
These are all good things. And we're having a group that's going to be coming together. Hopefully, we got a date this week to look at the safety forces, so that you can tell better after you get things in order for the ones that we have to have. The one that's probably going to be the hardest to move is the one we're sitting in with that, because these other things take priority. We have needs, and with the safety forces, our building is inadequate. Judy, you're concerned with the same thing, maintenance cost in staying in the building is something else you have to look at with that. But Judy's done a wonderful job of taking a program that was near ruination and brought it back to where we can even sit down and talk about something like this and make it a goal with that. So I appreciate all the work that she's put into and her staff for what they do. And gentlemen, it gives us something to look at, and we'll have more conversations.
Good. Well, thank you all.
Thank you.
We appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time, and to also, just to Judy's credit, she had very good comments and feedback from the Parks and Rec group as we went through this. There were several iterations, and I know she was a little disappointed when we said it didn't fit on the other site, but just very open-minded and bringing, forth constant ideas about how to get this to where it is, and I think this would really be a very nice building, and we had a lot of fun working on it, so thank you.
Thank you.
Dream big. That's what, the only way to go. Dream big or go home.
Well, luckily, we already live here, so.
That would be great for it.
Great idea.
All right. So moving on, the next item is updating 208.04 to include the correct start time of regular and committee of the whole meetings. I think this one's pretty cut and dry. It's in our packet. It doesn't match the way we have it now. Right now, it actually reads at 7 o'clock and we're doing everything at 6. So this is really just a cleanup. Does anybody have any questions on that one?
No, I thought we changed that a long time ago when we changed
Yeah,
it.
we changed it in one
did.
place.
We changed 22001.
Yeah.
Which is the problem, to say that we start our regular meetings at 6 o'clock, but 208.04 wasn't changed. And it's just one of those things we have to be careful, when we change one part of our code to make sure it's in line with other parts. I would
agree.
like the committee to move this one forward with an emergency clause so that we can fix this as soon as possible. But yeah, it's like just cleaning house here.
You
Yeah, I'm
guys
sure
okay
with that. Yeah, that's fine.
Yes.
That's
Okay,
easy.
we'll move that one. Yeah, that was an easy one. The next one is 220.10 to include instructions for public comment. I think, when we had the work session, we had a little bit of discussion about this. Just having a clarified, clear way of how we're doing public comments for all of our meetings. So we did talk about it a little bit. Rob, do you want to?
Yeah, so this tracking sheet and section of our ordinance actually addresses two things. One is public comment, but also the consent agenda, which is what we spent a fair amount of time talking about in that work session as well. So 22010 talks about the agenda, and I just modified it. It should be in your packet to say agenda, consent agenda, and public comment. So kind of need to break this down into two different parts. The consent agenda is basically a way for us to be a little bit more efficient. I would argue it does two things. Makes us more efficient in that we can bundle the things that we plan on passing pretty much pro forma on a regular basis. It could be some things like minutes, just approving the reports that come before us at a regular meeting. But it could also be ordinances such as the tax assessments. I mean, is there really a debate about whether we're going to do that? And other ordinances that don't require a whole lot of thought, maybe somebody's donating. We have how many donations do we get? Why would we turn down a donation, or why would we not apply for a grant? So the beauty is it consolidates the things that we don't really need to spend a whole lot of time talking about at a regular meeting. And we may spend some time talking about those at, these types of committee meetings. But it also gives the option that if anything in a consent agenda would be something that anybody on council, myself or the mayor would like to pull out, then we would put it back in the regular agenda for that meeting. So there's all kinds of options. And by doing this, by having a consent agenda where we can consolidate a lot of things, we can pass them in very quick format and give ourselves more time to discuss other things that maybe we don't always spend enough time, because we're all looking at the clock. It's like, oh my God, we've been here 2 hours, But it's an important, thing to talk about. So this, I think, hopefully will make us not only more efficient, but more focused on the things that I think we all agree need more discussion. The way I envision this working would be at the committee of the whole meeting, we could decide item by item as we move things forward, whether or not it's something we want to put in the consent agenda. At that moment, we can decide to put it in there. And like I said, any moment from that point until it actually comes up in a regular meeting for approval of the consent agenda, anybody can pull any item out. We've also, and I know this is it's hard because so many things are interconnected, but we also changed, and that'll be the next topic on this committee meeting, where we put public comment, so that if the public had a concern about something in consent agenda, they could raise it, and then a member could pull it out. So we kind of moved the order of things for that purpose. I don't know that there's any other discussion or debate. Probably, if this did get moved forward, we could be a bit judicial about what we put in the consent agenda initially, and then as time goes by, we might more organically know what better fits in a consent agenda and what shouldn't. But I think it's important for not just the planning committee, but all of council to recognize what the consent agenda is, what it's designed to do, and whether or not you think it's a good idea. Because it is a diversion from how we've conducted business significantly. But it's also something that other councils regularly do, other boards do. So there is that. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, would you clarify a little bit more about the public comments? How
Well,
you
okay,
want that to be changed?
yeah, we'll talk, I'm trying to break it down
Okay.
between the consent agenda and then talk about the public comment. We'll
So,
talk about that in a
Rob,
second.
okay, so who would decide on the consent agenda what goes where?
So,
Committee of the whole, right?
Is
yeah,
that-
as we get to committee of the whole, like, I would introduce, okay, here's the next item on the agenda. We talk about it, and then what's the pleasure of the committee? Well, we want an ordinance. Well, do you want to also put it in the consent agenda?
Just imagine a second drop down in the box.
Okay, so then this would be on then a separate part of the regular meeting. This wouldn't require like a lot of talk about that.
No, it kind of like takes all the stuff, that housekeeping stuff, or as much as everything we do is important, right? So all the grants and the donations and stuff, but it kind of takes all those things that, oh, come on, we're going to take money. If someone donates it, it puts them
People
together.
still talk though.
No,
People
no.
still ask a lot of questions on some
Absolutely,
of it.
but it gives us the opportunity to talk about them at committee of the whole, and then it clumps them together and we're voting on them once.
Right, so during a regular meeting, when we come up to the consent agenda item, at that moment, anybody could pull anything that's in the consent agenda out, and we talk about it individually, separate, and vote on it separately, or there would just simply be a vote. Now, there could be a clarifying question about something in the consent agenda, but not a whole lot of debate. The idea is just to, review it beforehand, and then have a single vote of council to approve the consent agenda, which means everything in it gets approved.
Okay.
Like a badge.
So my understanding then is if, like, let's say someone did safety forces get donations all the
Right.
time, you could still mention, hey, thanks, Bob Smith, for the
Yeah.
donation to the fire
Sure.
department. It doesn't have to be a separate.
Well, each of the things also would have been discussed at the committee meeting. And we would have talked about it at the
Right.
committee meeting.
Absolutely.
And we would have talked about it then at the committee of the whole. I'm in favor of it. I think it's a good idea. If we took a couple of things we've just talked about recently that might go straight into a consent agenda, the sharing of the salt would go into the consent agenda. The chemicals that we recently bought for the streets, consent agenda, a number of those things. And then with one vote, we pass all 10 or 12 of those items. In some council meetings, we've had up to 40 different ordinances that we've gone through with 3 votes. And I think it would say, and we could be very scrupulous in pulling anything out that we want to talk about separately, but we have so many things that are just of a routine nature that I think would be, I think it would work well. I've worked with it before, a consent agenda with Board of Education in the past, and it works okay.
Question for you, Dr. Calfee. Since you've worked with them before, was there a particular rubric that they had for what items would classify or qualify as a suggestion for versus?
It was the administration that
Discretion.
made the discretion
Okay,
to call on it. Here, one thing that I wonder, though, is right now in our ordinances, it says when we're passing an ordinance, we have to read the whole title of it, the part that Chelsea reads. If we go to a consent agenda, would we then not have to read all those through there? Because that may take as much time.
You just proved the previous item importance, because you're right, there's this different section that we already changed early on when I was in council, because it actually said we were supposed to read the entire ordinance. Now it says you just read the title only. We could probably change that. I'll look into changing that to say unless it's in the consent agenda.
Yeah, just the thought.
Yeah, no, an important one, I think. Okay.
Otherwise, that's a lot of titles for one batch.
Yeah.
Right.
Chelsea's going to get hoarse reading all those straight in a row.
Well, just consider she would have had to read them anyway without the
Yeah.
consent agenda.
Yeah, but at least she gets to break in between each one while we have a conversation.
If you ever watch the Ohio Channel, I watch it all the time because I'm a nut for this stuff. They have, sometimes, not all the time, they have a guy in the Senate who is a speed reader. And I challenge you to figure out what he's saying. He's so awesome. Okay.
Rob,
we
I
good?
have
Yes.
a quick question.
Sure.
In this, you state that a person that wants to speak has to submit in writing 30 days in advance.
Okay, that's
30 minutes?
that's the public comment. We're still on the consent
Oh.
agenda part.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we'll have plenty of time to talk about public comments.
All right.
Is that okay?
So what's the committee feel about moving this forward?
I think I'm okay with moving
But I
it forward
think
for
it's
further
combined
discussion.
with,
It is.
But
It
not
is.
just this part of
Segmenting,
it.
right?
Yeah, we're still going to
Yeah.
talk about the,
No,
okay.
we don't have to vote in the
Yeah.
committee to move this on until we talk about public
Yeah.
comment.
because I almost feel like, and we'll see after the discussion.
Yeah.
But I almost feel like it might be 2 separate topics.
Yeah, I was going
Like
to say they
maybe
might
Well-
be separated.
That's a good point. In a sense, it is, but I guess it's one topic in the sense that it's all the same section of our code. But we could, if you wanted to, we could split it up into 2 ordinances and
I
then.
think that might be, just in case, I
Okay.
personally, at this
that's fine.
point, don't care either way, but I think that it just depends on how the discussion goes,
Yeah.
and it might be a good idea to have it separated out.
Okay.
No, I agree.
so then we would also have a separate one for the meeting agenda as well.
Yeah, those are 2 separate things, so.
That's already a
Yeah, that's-
separate tracking sheet.
correct. Okay.
Because it is a separate part of the code, I figured it would be separate. Okay, so we good to talk about public comment then? So, obviously, we've actually talked about how we should handle public comment in the past. This isn't new. And the wording in here that I added under C, doesn't have to be necessarily the wording we end up with. But the key components here, and there's still some questions if you look in the packet at the bottom of this sheet that I think we need to decide upon, because we didn't, in our work session, come to a conclusion on how to answer those questions. But some of the things we did suggest were reasonable, was like giving 5 minutes, which is fairly generous when you look at other councils. A lot of, the most common I see is 3 minutes for some reason. I guess somewhere down the line, somebody came up with 3 minutes and everybody followed suit. That seems to be the way a lot of councils work.
Well, 5 minutes of talking is actually quite long.
It can be, right, depending upon the topic. And you can also request more time, or somebody on council during, and by the way, this is just for the regular meeting, not for committee meetings. council can grant more time if it's needed. Now, most places break this down into two different parts. Whether or not the speaker wants to talk about something that's going to be voted on in the agenda. And again, that's why we kind of put it above the consent agenda in case that's something they want, that somebody wanted to speak to. Or whether it's something, a topic that's not on the agenda, which we usually is what we usually get speakers coming in and talking about. It may turn into an agenda item like we saw tonight. So the question becomes, do we want to separate out those people who want to talk to an agenda item and put them in with the agenda item? Or do we want to put all the speakers up front, and so there's distance between what they want to say and advise council to do and act upon, maybe a half hour later, or who knows how much later, that the item actually comes up for discussion? And I don't know, I'm a little bit conflicted. I think if I were leaning in one direction, I think I kind of like having the discussion by the public at the same time council is considering a vote on it. But I'm curious to think what other people feel. I know in other places they don't divide it. And some places do and some places don't.
I would rather hear comments as we're discussing a topic. I feel like it gives a more definitive input.
So then someone would get their slip, put their name, put their agenda item, and then we would have to just organize it when it comes time to vote on the trash cans. The trash can item, that's when we have that discussion, so we just have to be, but it does help that flow and help organize it. Yeah, I agree.
But again, too, if somebody comes in and they've never been here before and they don't know the process, I personally don't want to.
I still want to hear them.
I still want to hear them. I'm not going to turn anybody away and deny them their right.
Well, I would say that instead of having it say 30 minutes before the start of the council meeting, I would just say before the start of the council meeting. And then if someone comes in, it's someone that's never been here, we can show them, this is how you sign up to be able to speak. What are you here for? Oh, you're just here to watch tonight? Great. Or just like how Mr. Coffey went up and talked to the architects, just kind of seeing our audience and making sure that everyone's being taken care of. I think if you take out that 30 minutes, then we can't hear everybody, because we're going to show them how that happens.
But then if they're here to watch or listen, and instantaneously they come up with a comment or a question that they would like to make.
So that's can be problematic. I think the point of organizing this was to avoid just the contemporaneous somebody coming up like Larry is about to do in the middle of a meeting. I think the plan, and we'll let you talk in a second, don't worry about that. I think the idea is if somebody wants to share their thoughts, whether it's an agenda item or not, they have to identify themselves, they have to identify what they're going to talk about, and then depending upon how we decide where to place whether it's with the item itself or all in the beginning, at least it's organized and we know what to expect. If we leave it open-ended and just allow anybody to come up and talk, then we've given away that ability to control whether or not, they're going to say something we don't, that's going to be a problem.
I'm not worried about what they're going to say. I want to give them time to speak. I do think that limiting the comment period and the amount of time in which they have to speak is a legitimate concern, and we should limit that. But I am all for giving everybody the opportunity to speak, and not everybody's going to know up front what they're going to want to talk about, because they're not going to know how our conversations and discussions are going to go.
I can tell you that is not the norm. You're going to be hard pressed to find any city council that just allows people to talk ad hoc at any moment during the meeting.
And this is just for the city council meeting. So let's say we're doing committee meetings. That could be more of a dialogue during your committee meetings.
Yeah.
This is just for our regular council meeting.
Yes.
So when we're voting on everything, when we've already had the discussion, it's already been through committee of the whole, we're having the discussion, and then this way it just helps us to organize that committee meeting. I have actually never been to another council or board or other meeting where people just speak up throughout the meeting.
Right.
Well, I know it's up to us to control the meeting too. So, I mean, if somebody is, talking too much, or even one of us talking too much, it's up to us to stop it and control it. And, if they've talked, then we need to stop it. But again, I know other communities do things different, but I just don't know too how comfortable I am with limiting people to talk.
I'm not.
We talked about this a long time ago on council, and it was very controversial about someone's freedom of speech and.
Yeah.
But it's
And
not
especially-
limiting anything.
We're not
Especially
limiting
when
anybody's
we've had
freedom of
so many
speech.
discussions where it's always, well, we need to have a public hearing on that. We need to get public opinion on this. So there's a lot of things that we all agree that we need public opinion and public hearings on. Well, we could limit the actual official public meetings and public hearings and allow more people to speak here freely.
But you see, that's exactly why they have public hearings, because most bodies don't include within the deciding, the members of the deciding body, they don't just open up the floor to everybody. That's why we have public hearings, for the sole purpose of getting public input. And I think, certainly it's going to be the will of council how you want to proceed and if you want to make any changes. But I do think that this is the normal way that councils handle this. And it does open the door for more chaos if we just leave it open-ended. And by the way, then we don't need slips. Why would we even bother with slips for the people who show up organized to come and speak if we're just going to let everybody talk anytime they want? Okay, Larry, I think was first, unless you want to.
Well, first of all, let me say, I think you're trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist. I've been coming to these meetings for almost every meeting for more than half a dozen years, and I don't feel the public input has been a problem.
Nobody's saying it's been a problem.
Okay, so let's not fix something that's not a problem.
Well,
We do too much of that in this town. The other thing, I think Cheryl tried to say, the public should be able to respond after they hear the discussion of the members on council, instead of trying to decide what we need to say ahead of time. It might save you time if we hear our concerns addressed and our questions answered, we wouldn't have to say anything. But if you want everybody to come in ahead of time to speak on a subject.
but you just said that that's the way it's been done for many years without having to be fixed. And it typically is. But there was another discussion we had, and it's part of the questions I added to the bottom, and I don't know if you have the packet. One way to address that would be, and other bodies do this, I don't know if other city councils do it, is any member of the body, any councilman, the mayor or the president of council, could call upon somebody in the public they know and ask them to speak about something, even if they haven't signed up in the past. So it would be an action by the body itself, drawing from the public, not just the public raising their hand, and that would be one way to address that.
Well, until you said it's different from raising your hand, it sounded like what we do now. If members of the council can call on people,
Well, they
then why
could-
can't people say, I want to speak, and a member of the council call on them, as we do now?
Well, it's because the meeting is, technically amongst the members. I mean, that's the purpose of a city council meeting. And I'm referring to other bodies I've been on where nobody from the public was ever allowed to speak, period. You couldn't sign up for a slip. You had to be recognized as an observer of the meeting by some official member of the committee before you would be allowed to speak. So that's why I introduced that concept. At the meeting, it didn't get too much positive response, but that would be a way to kind of address the ad hoc component of it.
Well, again, I don't think it's been a problem. I don't think we should try to make any changes right now.
I agree. I think we have too many things that we need people from, with passing levies, things that our residents have always been good at. I don't know. Right now, I'm not kind of keen on it.
My name is Cynthia Miller, I live 727 East Main Street, and I may be internalizing this a little bit too much, but it feels like Mrs. Miller needs to sit down now, that she's talked too much. That's what it feels like.
Well, you're internalizing it too much.
Probably.
Mhm. You are.
But I don't think that the comment I made tonight about finding out just today, how would I know 30 days or even before the meeting? I just found this out today, that the assessment that every resident pays on their city taxes in Ravenna for streets includes sidewalks. Sidewalks are included in that. The people on Park Avenue are paying those taxes with their paycheck or their investments or whatever they have, but they don't have a sidewalk. That comment came today because the information that I found out today. What if I found that out from somebody sitting in the audience that I trusted during the meeting? Well, my time had already passed. So,
Well,
really,
but in your example, you could have, assuming this was a regular meeting, could have signed a slip because you had knowledge beforehand and spoke to it.
Speaking of that, I didn't know someone else would bring it up. It was somebody on council that told me this.
Right, but our agendas are published beforehand.
Published before,
Yeah,
and it's not published on any agenda that comment was being made.
Well, but, and there's no official business related to that. And by the way, that passed, 9 years ago.
And so for 9 years, the people on Park Avenue have been paying for sidewalk they don't have?
Well, that part of their income tax has gone into a pool of money that included the potential for spending. Yeah, and if they voted, then they read and either voted for it or against it. They may have voted against it because they don't have sidewalks, I don't know.
That anyone that lives on Park would go door to door and ask, do you know that your taxes are paying for a sidewalk you don't have?
But I would also assume that the people on Park Avenue would utilize other sidewalks in the city, and the whole purpose is all of our sidewalks. So just because they don't have one, they're still walking around and utilizing the sidewalks.
Not with all those cars parked the way it is.
So, well,
And I'm sorry too, that I understand the people that are here, that you guys come all the time and you talk, and I can understand how it might be personal feeling at this time. And I apologize, because I mean, I probably would feel the same way, and the timing may not be of a good timing, but I recognize your feelings.
You know, we're human beings, and the way our brains work is our brains aren't timed to come up with good ideas 30 minutes before council, or 30 days before council if you want something written. That's not the way it
No,
works. You react to the stimuli you're given at that moment. And sometimes something that you remember from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, that is relevant, that would be helpful, comes to your mind. You have to be able to speak up. Everybody in this town has a wealth of experience that is untapped.
Look.
I was a president of a board of directors of the YWCA. I've held meetings myself before, much looser than this. I don't know the rules of the city council. I think Larry's right, basically. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I don't think it's a problem. I don't think it should.
So we don't always deal with, whether something currently is a problem or not. I think sometimes when we look at our code, at least the way my mind works, and if anybody knows anything about how
You're a process guy.
you took the words out of my mouth. So I mean, let's say hypothetically, there is a controversial item, and maybe it affects a business owner or someone who corrals 20 people. They all get to speak for 5 minutes because we don't have any control over that.
We've had that happen before.
Yes.
Well, okay, so then this is not reinventing the wheel. But is it, if it's a biased opinion because somebody has a certain perspective and they're trying to drive a wedge into whatever the discussion is? Well, but it's not.
You bring that with you as a human being.
No,
That's your point of view, is your bias. And I don't want to argue with you. It just doesn't seem proper that just because another body or another township or another municipality does something one way, that this body has to.
Well, what does it say when pretty much all of them do it?
Doesn't matter.
We can do whatever
Well,
we want.
I think it does, actually.
I had a couple comments.
No, I'm talking about, well, right, but I'm talking about what the world expects, and, you know, and what we're doing is deviating from it.
Expects the city council to cut off public comment.
We're not cutting any.
Christina? Yeah.
Tim has a
I have a
comment to
couple,
make.
yeah.
Please.
I'm not, we'll sit down.
I wanted to give a couple comments regarding it. I am not against the idea of someone filling out a speaker's slip. I don't think it should be 30 minutes before, just before the start of council, I think is fine to do that. I do think that we need to separate our speakers that want to speak on the agenda and speakers that want to bring other issues forward. We do, at council meetings, have people that come that want to talk about something, whether it's chicken ordinances or it's whatever. And I think we need to have a designated time for those people to speak on something not related to the agenda. Agenda item speakers, I don't really care whether we put all agenda item speakers at the beginning before we begin to work through, or put them right next to a certain item that they're wanting to comment on. I think either one is okay. I also just want to mention that all of what we're talking about is for the city council meeting. It is not for the committee meetings. It is not for the committee of the whole. And so it's, we're just talking about the regular monthly city council meeting where we would have these rules about speaking. Yeah, that's all I had.
We have a comment.
And by the way, I made the announcement that any of these changes will require, well, I don't know that they require them, but I will schedule public hearing separately about these, because I do want the public to hear about this. I mean, we are talking about their ability to comment.
When you were first voted in for a councilman, you tried this before. You brought this up before, and I was against it then.
I did?
Oh, yes. You can go back in a minute. Oh, you wanted to limit people how they could speak, and I said, you're in dangerous territory.
Well, I don't, you could show me the minutes, but I never made any suggestion we change our meetings.
Selective memory, maybe, I don't know. But let me say, I'm against it now. And I guess I just have one hypothetical question. So if you limit it on the regular meeting and you're going through first reading, second reading, third reading, I have seen you guys decide after the first meeting or the second meeting to do away with the third meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Right.
So are you going to open it up then for somebody who wants to speak about it? Because you've just changed the rules.
I'm not sure I understand.
There's been times when it was you're going to do it 3 meetings, 3 readings.
Right.
And then somewhere.
I mean, that
down
is the
line-
standard, by the
Yes,
way.
but somewhere down the line, it got to second meeting, and we're gonna do away with that. We're gonna make an emergency now, and we're gonna do it
Well,
now.
the emergency is separate, but normally the reason something may pass on the first reading is because maybe a contract hasn't been prepared, hasn't been presented. There might be a technicality. If there's a plan to have, I don't remember an instance, and anybody else can correct me, where we've planned on having 3 readings and then shortcutted it. I think what we normally do is just have 1 reading. I mean, that, we all know that.
For the most part, yeah.
So we waive the rest. The reason we don't always do it on the first attempt is because we weren't prepared to vote on it. There's something missing, an exhibit or something.
I'll say the same thing that I said back then when you brought it up the last time. You see all these empty chairs out here? Because people think their voice doesn't mean anything, okay? Whether it's perceived, and it's wrong, but by doing this, I think it's just another nail being driven into it, okay? It's important these people can talk to you all together, because they can't call Dr. Calfee and talk to just one person, and then you, and then you, and they can't get them on the phone, or they can't, email them or whatever. This is the place, this is the forum. Figure out what you want to do, but I don't think I'm against what you're talking about there. That's it.
Well, we appreciate your comments.
Anybody else have?
Yeah.
Don't be afraid of us. Don't be afraid of what we say. Don't be
Following up on not being afraid, thank you. I do think that there may be some merits to having an opportunity to say, if you are going to be speaking about something that's not on the agenda, is if you just want to come in and share something, whether it's Mrs. Chambers having an issue with streets and it got to a point where she was more formal about it. But I think having been someone who's been in the audience multiple times, even encouraging my parents occasionally to come in, it's sometimes like if you have an issue that you want to bring before council, it's not really clear, like I think a lot of us had experienced in the beginning days, of like, how do you address council? So if you show up at the meeting, you sit there, and you're like, okay, when do I get a chance to talk? And unless you're brave enough to throw a hand out, and bonus points for those that do, it's not really clear where the public has an opportunity to come in to comment, because the agenda doesn't really say open public comment. So I think if someone did want to come in, express a concern, they only have that concern, and they don't want to sit through however long the meeting may take. They could come in, speak their piece for as long as it's reasonable, and then go about their business. So we use their time effectively as well, and we get to get their feedback and comments. So, but if it is about the agenda, Cheryl, I did like what you shared. Try to keep that stuff together. So while we're talking about a topic, get that feedback from the public at the same time before we go to vote on that, especially if it's bumped out from like a consent agenda for that.
That, and I do agree with the public comments, non-agenda items, but I think that's usually covered under public delegations in the beginning. It's just been recently that we've actually had the specific people signed up under public delegations, but there's been many a times over the years that people would speak during that time if there was something non-agenda that they wanted to bring up.
But I have heard what Cliff has commented from different residents that hardly anyone listens to me, as an example. And I believe that barrier needs to be broken somehow.
And I'm with you there. There might be, like, the not feeling heard could come from, like, you know, reaching out to a department and not getting a response or not getting a satisfying response. Sometimes that happens. So there might be other ways that we can improve how residents can be heard, too. So not just in our, you know, formal, regular meetings, but getting more people involved in coming to committee meetings themselves, getting involved, those kind of things, work sessions, even just reaching out to council folks. Just like how you say, don't be afraid. Well, we exist too. Don't be afraid to reach out on our end as well.
So I'm not exactly sure where this is heading. I guess there's a fundamental question about whether we should include any such restrictions or changes when it comes to public comment. I mean, I'm not sure I'm getting a good sense from council which direction to go. Should we just abandon, we've already kind of seemed to come to consensus to move forward at least with the consent agenda part of this particular code item. Do we just take out any changes, any suggestions for public comment, and just leave everything the way it is? I mean, one of the things I always look for when we make changes like chickens and things like that is, what do other councils do? What is the standard expectation out there? There's not always a standard, right? And people do things differently. In this case, there is a standard. I mean, the expectation, if you're going to run for council in just about any city that I've looked into, is that there are these types of restrictions on public comment at regular meetings. But that doesn't, okay, I accept the fact that we can be the aberrant council. We can do things differently. And we have, in a sense, right? Because we haven't provided any restrictions. Or is there a middle ground, you know?
I just feel like for someone that's coming into council and has never been here, to have something up there that they can look and fill out to kind of understand when they're going to speak and where they're going to speak, how long they have, it's all on there. And at least it gives someone new coming in some guidelines on what needs to be done. So it doesn't have to be 30 minutes or 4. It could be even.
Well, I've already made a note.
Right.
30 minutes was just an arbitrary.
So it gives someone that might be really super nervous to stand up, because I've done it, and it's terrible to stand up in front of this group of people. So for someone that's really super nervous, to kind of understand where they're where they fall in the agenda.
Just to know the expectation, yeah.
Right, is helpful. Then it also gives us information on the slip, would have their name and address and their contact information. So if anybody wanted to follow up with them afterwards, we have all that. We can eliminate that piece of time. So kind of just helping to organize us as we're doing this. And that seems to be, I mean, not that, it seems to work well in other places where I've seen it.
Wasn't there a slip that Andrew had previously tried to implement?
It was much larger, if I recall.
And it was going to be a turn this in order to speak so that we had the contact information, things like that. It was attempted to implement it. And then it
Well, we didn't do
fell
anything.
Well, we didn't
apart.
get, we didn't, we never
I
even
don't think he
discussed.
implemented it. I think he just shared the form with us.
I
And the
remember
form-
a couple of meetings where there were people filling out forms.
No, we never implemented the form for sure.
And the form that we had talked about was much shorter. It was like a half a sheet. So it was just that basic information, your name, address, you know, your contact information, non-agenda, agenda item, if it is, what are you here
Which
speaking?
one, yeah.
Yeah, that was it. So it kind of helps organize that beforehand, so we can put speakers in front of agenda items, and we can put, when someone comes and talks about, something great the police did, they can go first, and that doesn't have anything to do with the agenda item. So it kind of helps organize the flow of the meeting a little bit.
And what happens to the people that are here to maybe speak non-agenda at the beginning of the meeting about something, but they stay to watch the meeting and to hear what's going on, and then another topic of interest comes up later in the agenda, but they haven't put their slip of paper in saying that they wanted to speak on something?
Well, I don't think we have any ordinance that would prevent us from recognizing someone from the public. Like if someone does pique interest, you know, whether it's a raised hand or something, you'd say like, I'd like to recognize Mrs. Miller, for example. I mean, we're not saying we can't recognize public delegations.
Well, again, you know,
I just, you know,
I mean,
there's
order of
not
a
a
meeting
change
is
at
one
that
part,
point.
though.
And I guess I just don't want to limit anybody from being able to speak or, you know.
Shouldn't limit anybody.
I think there is an opportunity we're not seeing here too, because if someone does have a concern that they either want to spend 3, 5, or however long to discuss it, if it's a presentation, they can say it can take longer. But if they want us to have a prepared statement or something as a response to it, give us time to look into something, how many times has someone come up here and we say, okay, we'll follow up with it? And we don't really have, like, how many times have we actually taken for every instance of someone saying, I have an issue, do we even track how we've resolved or addressed that concern? Do we track that?
I do. I follow up.
Like, do you guys keep spreadsheets?
I
What
don't
do your
do
numbers look like?
spreadsheets.
No.
I don't, that's not me, spreadsheets. I can assure you I have a good track record.
Okay. But still, I mean, like, there is a chance we're all human. We might forget something. So I'm on the side of documentation to make sure nothing slips through the cracks. Larry, I think you had a comment?
Go ahead.
Come on
ahead.
down, the price is right.
Well, just a thought, you're talking about a form for people to fill out. Does that mean nobody could get on the agenda without coming in here? You can't call Chelsea or send an email? If
Well-
you're gonna have a form, it should probably also be on the internet.
Right, I would envision it would be done that way. That they could fill it out online, they could still call. You know, I suppose in the case of a phone call, Chelsea could fill out the slip on their behalf. Well, I'm not, we're not trying to throw up roadblocks for that purpose. I do think it's standard operating procedures for councils to know before somebody gets up and talks what they're gonna talk about. To me, that's just common sense.
It's kind of organization, preparation.
But we don't have that. You know, as long as I've been on council, we've had a spot on the agenda where we just say, does anybody want to get up and talk? You know, as long as they give their name and address, they can talk about whatever they want. And I think that's a bit of a danger.
But it's up to you to stop them if they.
Well, but by the time they've said what they've had to say, it may be too late. The cat may be out of the bag.
But that could be, even if they write it or not, they still could say something.
Sure.
Well, that's
Writing
true.
something has nothing
That's
to do
true.
with it.
Yeah.
That's true, but at least we know what they plan to talk about.
The other thing too is and I'll use an example, the situation we had with the Parks Department. We would have been able to have a conversation ahead of time about that, right? Because we would have known what they were talking about and let them know you cannot talk about specific employees or you cannot, and have that conversation ahead of time so that that can be prevented as well. It's kind of just,
We
again.
have to walk a very fine line on what's restricted and what's not. And yes, as I agree that we need to protect our employees, very much so. At the same time, I don't want to infringe on anyone's rights.
Well, I don't think it would be
We're all here because
not-
we were elected.
Yeah,
and
no, I
It's
agree.
important to hear the citizens' comments and
Well, and again,
points.
I just, repeat what I've said over and over again. I mean, that's the standard procedure in just about any city council and a lot of other places, not just city councils. That, it's kind of a due diligence. If you're going to let somebody, this is a public meeting, and there are people on the internet listening to us.
Right.
And I think we need to have some control of what we expect people to say, at least to know what they're going to say beforehand. I think that's just, normal operating procedures. But we don't have that now. And we don't have a limit on the time either. I've been kind of telling people, right? Mrs. Miller knows.
I've said
please
from the
5,
beginning.
but I always say, please try to limit it to 5. But I think everyone knows here, we've had people come up and talk for half an hour.
Yeah, but
And we've also had people on council that have said,
But can you?
talk
Because there's nothing in
forever.
our ordinance that says we can.
Yeah, but when you tell them 5 minutes, 10, whatever,
Well, but that's kind of what I'm trying to do to some extent here, to put in 5 minutes. Right now, we don't have anything in our ordinance that says you're restricted to 5
The
minutes.
time restrictions, I don't think anybody's had any issues with that. Restricting the amount of time and then having the ability for council president to be able to extend that time has not been an issue that that I've heard from any of us.
But we don't have that
It's
anywhere in
restricting
ordinance.
somebody
Yeah.
from speaking is where I have an issue.
Well,
Yeah,
we're not.
that's the biggest
We're not talking about, but by the way, I would push back a little bit and say that we've let people go on.
Right, and I'm saying we should have a time limit.
Oh, okay,
I am in
I'm sorry.
agreement on that. I just don't think that we should restrict what they say or who says it.
No, I don't, well, I guess it depends. I mean, there might be some legal concerns about if somebody writes on a slip that they want to talk about even a council member or somebody else, maybe a public official would be liable, but like an employee, I would say, no, we're not going to let you get up and defame somebody in a public meeting. I think that would be a restricted thing.
I agree, but at the time that they start speaking, that's when you stop them and say, I'm sorry, this is not
Yeah,
the
but
appropriate.
Yeah.
You have to.
I think at this point, I think we've kind of agreed that the majority likes the consent agenda. It still sounds like there's some deliberation to be had about the public comment. Myself, I'm not in favor of making changes to the public comment at this time, but I do think it's time to move on.
Thank you.
I do suggest moving forward with B, and we can table C.
Still talk about it.
Okay, well, it was Ms.
So-
Wood's suggestion we separate them out anyway, so.
So are we okay then, Amy and Tim, with moving B forward? With the consent agenda piece, and we're gonna table C? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The last item shouldn't take very long. It's just changing the order of the agenda, because we do have the agenda itself listed in our ordinances. So I think I don't know if there's even an adjustment that needs to be made by taking out the public comment part. Right? Does everybody know what I'm talking about?
No.
The last thing in your packet is 22009, order of business, which basically lists the agenda for the regular meeting. And all I did was, because things like the minutes, communications, reports from officials, assuming the consent agenda part, which people seem to be in favor of moving forward at least, would be part of the consent agenda, we would take those out of the regular agenda. Right? That's why they're crossed out. It's relettered or numbered. The only addition there was Ms. West's suggestion that we include a separate agenda item to invite department heads, a different department head to each meeting. And that was added. That's the only other change. Public comment is still in the agenda, and as long as we're not changing anything to that, it still needs to be in the agenda.
And then the approval of the agenda is where we
Oh,
we would talk
yes.
about.
Okay, I'm
That's
sorry.
added too, where we would talk about what would be, if anything wanted to come out of the consent agenda. And we would be actually approving the agenda that's in front of us, the way that it is. So where we could make changes then.
Yeah, and that's just kind of, so we've done that, ad hoc at some meetings where we've, we're going to put this in a different place or something like that. That would give us, at the beginning of the meeting, the option to change something in the agenda, which is, just something we do anyway. I think this is just formalizing our practice. But I don't think, unless I'm missing something, I don't think there's anything else in here that's all that controversial. Of course, I've been known to misread.
For G though, I don't know if I want, but I'm gonna think about this, because I don't necessarily think it has to be a department head.
Oh,
I think it
okay.
could be anybody from the department, and let's be honest, 4 or 5 of our department heads are here usually anyways. So most folks are already coming to our meetings, but, to have that on a rotation and just that department, so maybe, Jason Lovejoy can't come and he sends someone else for him, that's perfectly fine. Maybe
Okay,
he's
and
not a
what
great
do you-
public speaker, I don't know. But, so to kind of change those words around,
Invited city employee?
For delegate, perhaps.
Department representative.
department
Oh,
representative.
representative, okay.
Yeah. And that's something that, we could just send out on a rotation and, so everybody kind of knows in advance when they would be able to go. I was shot down for the Zoom idea pretty quickly, so asking them to come in person. But just to be able to share what's going on in their department, so that way when we have things come in front of council, it's not as much a surprise sometimes. I think that would be nice. It would be nice for us, for also the department representatives to get to have a chance to have a conversation with us as well, so. All right, does anybody have anything else to change on that agenda? The order of business, the way we have it? Is that one okay to move forward then?
Yes.
Are you okay? Are you okay with that? Okay. I think that's all I have. And I want to say quickly, I appreciate everyone's conversation about the public comment. Obviously, I'm very new to city council compared to some people that are sitting here. So your feedback is absolutely important, and just as important for you guys to provide the feedback. For me, the way I was looking at it was, the way that I've done for the County Board of Developmental Disabilities, or a county commissioners meeting, or other public forums that I'm participating in, that's the way we were doing it, and it seems to work really well. So, to kind of have that, that flow, that's kind of what I was looking for when Rob presented it. So, but I appreciate everyone's feedback on that. Do we have a management update? I don't even know where I'm at.
Yeah.
Just, the problem on South Chestnut Street, we did have the EPA in again, and it looks like they're gonna move on getting something done with that cleanup in that area. I don't know how fast they're going to do it, but at least they've been there and they've looked at it, and it should happen quickly. They have money they need to spend, and that's a worthwhile project. So I'm hopeful that we start seeing stuff happen there in the next few weeks.
Awesome.
All right, and I will end the committee meeting at 8:13 PM.
At 8:13, I'll bring Community and Economic Development Committee to order, and the only item on the agenda is the LG Chem Tour. Exciting, and I'll let the mayor speak on this.
Well, I was surprised to see it on there. I think their open house, the last I'd heard, is going to be the latter part of August. And their target is actually going to be potential customers. But the city will be sending a delegation from that, and we'll need to, it keeps changing. One time, bring everybody, the next time, no more than 5. So it's it's a moving target. I think Bob might have some more current information on that.
Well, okay, so I put this on the agenda.
Okay.
Because I asked Mr. West if we could have a walkthrough, and it was actually a suggestion somebody else on council made. And he responded that, I think he did mention that there was going to be a limit for their groundbreak, I don't know what they were calling it.
Yeah.
Celebration. But he said, LG has acknowledged the interest of scheduling a walkthrough of the facility by city council. Their response was the best time to do this would be the week of July 22nd. So sometime between July 22nd and the 26th, they could accommodate. Now, maybe if you're saying it's a moving target, maybe things have changed. That was as of last week.
That sounds like it would be more solid than what we were talking about with the official.
Yeah, this is separate. This would be separate. So I put it on the agenda to see who would be available the week of the 22nd, and to send back Dennis some dates and times.
I think it's a great idea. I think council's had a lot of involvement in this project, including passing lots of ordinances, lots of money spent, lots of involvement. And it's not an unusual thing, I think, for a city council to go through and get a look at a new facility that's going in, especially if they've said they're open to it. His response back is they're open to it during that week. I'm all for it.
You're available. You have a free schedule?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I would like to go as well. Make something work.
So let me just look at the calendar. So the what are we doing in August? 22nd is 2 weeks from tonight.
Yes.
So they pretty much had it open-ended Monday through Friday. I kind of assume it would be during the day, right? Is there any particular day that week that's most people would find more accommodating?
Fridays have the least meetings for me.
Fridays, the 26th? Should I give them, is there any particular?
Thursday or Fridays for me.
Any particular time that's bad?
Wednesday, Thursdays are better for me.
Thanks.
I'm a realtor. I got to work when everybody else is off.
Thursday's sounding good. Thursday was okay with you?
Oh, Thursday?
I'll try about moving some stuff
He
around.
can move some stuff
I can
around.
move some stuff
Yeah.
around.
Thursday?
I'm in.
As long as I don't have to report. we're good.
Okay, Thursday,
The 25th, right?
25th. Any restrictions in terms of time? Should we make it in the morning, in the afternoon,
Anytime
I
from
don't have my
6 on.
calendar in front of me.
in the morning? Yeah. Okay.
Like,
I'll
I don't
be
know,
up.
maybe
Early
like
bird.
later in
Maybe
the
send out an email when
Like-
everybody can check their calendars and their schedules.
Okay. well,
Like
I-
3
all right.
o'clock
We got
or-
a date anyway.
Yeah.
They may want to suggest the time
Yeah.
for
Okay,
us.
I just wanted to see if anybody had any restrictions on that day. All right, I'll give them the date, and I'll suggest if whatever time is convenient for LG.
Great.
Thank you.
So,
Great.
Any other management updates?
Not right now.
Okay. With that, we'll adjourn at 8:18.
Okay, Public Health and Safety Committee, it is 8:20. I have just a couple items on the agenda. The first one's really easy. Chief Chappell couldn't make it tonight. This one's pretty cut and dry. It's receiving an anonymous donation for $1,000. Perfect. We just need to accept the donation. There's no match to this. It's a resident of our community that just wanted to share this donation because they were so happy with the care that their loved one received.
it's awesome.
Okay?
Excellent example of an item that would be fitting on the consent agenda
I was
well.
thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move this forward. Next item would be the health spa, and we'll make this as painless as possible. Mr. Finney and I have talked about this recently due to them doing some inspections recently. And so we've had a lot of different discussions in regards to some comments in the community, and we want to make sure everybody's safe and define what we currently have. And we also want to make sure we are within our code, and if there's things that maybe we could tweak. I also found out that our current health department has no regulation on this. It's all done by state. And I don't know if that is something too that, we could possibly look at as well. Anytime a type of health spa that is in, in our downtown or in our community, to maybe have our local health department engaged in this as well. Sometimes they're a lot easier to deal with and have their eyes on things that maybe our state department might not be as easily to contact. But I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Finney as he asked me to. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. So the concern is foot spa and, I'm sorry?
Well,
Youth
in
was the
general,
name of it.
in general, we don't want to name
Correct.
the name on actually, because that wouldn't be right.
No.
So in the central business district, health spa or fitness center is a permitted use. So where do we draw the line? We do not define what a health spa is. I think I sent this email out to you guys in the past. As Amy and I discussed, Adam, George, and I did a walkthrough, as we do with generally all new businesses. Our building official was not able to attend that day, so just Adam and I went. And we opened the doors, closets, we go in the basements. We're looking for safety violations, or not violations, but things to make the building safe. And we could not communicate with those people because of their foreign language. But in any regard, so again, going back to the word health spa, that's a permitted use. They had been operating for a few months before we were able to get in. And the only thing I have to go with is a Google definition, a Webster's definition, or any of those dictionaries that would be well respected. And they might be performing a couple items of a health spa. Basically, it's a masseuse, is what I saw. And I base that on a menu that they have of fees, a schedule of fees, this service for this fee, this service for this fee. Again, when you look at the definition of health spa on Google, there's a wide range of services. Kind of, I guess it would be like the place in Rootstown. The services that they provide, memberships, swimming, sauna, exercising, exercise classes, that sort of thing. We don't have that definition. So if somebody wants to call their business a spa, I can't say they're wrong unless we have a definition. So one item is, if you don't want this type of business in the central business district, then you need to remove it in the code, or you need to move it to a conditionally permitted use and allow planning commission to vet out the business. Vet out the business in that they can ask the questions: what are your hours? What are your operation? What are you doing? How many customers? On and on, those types of things. And then if they don't like it, they can kick it to public hearing and say, no, we don't like it. Not approve it. But as it is right now, it's a permitted use. And then going back to the definition, these are things that we.
And do we, Bob, have the right to also, I know it's controlled by the state, but can we also have, if it's a conditional use, also have our local health department be a part of any type of spa, health spa in our community? Is there, I'm not sure. I mean, and the fact that they didn't, have to come to you and, really do anything, they just showed up. Nobody even knew this place even existed until, and I have received and I forwarded emails to everyone with my follow-up. And this is part of my follow-up from a resident that I said as well I would address. when we did further details with what was going on. We're also investigating some other things right now, too, to make sure that they're abiding by our rules in the city. But it's just, again, the types of things we want in our downtown, in our central business district, and to go through a process to, my thing is, once we start allowing certain types of businesses, you're going to just start seeing more and more multiply. And I know we've worked hard in our downtown, and I really want to make sure we have a better definition to ensure the other businesses in our downtown. Again, I think this is something that I'm for a conditional use, where it would have to have some type of boundaries going for planning commission, I think, and, having more questions asked before they open up in our central business district. That is something I think, I don't know what this committee feels. Any thought, anything else anyone would like to say?
You basing this on the definition of a health spa, right? Because it's health spa or fitness center.
Correct.
Well, do they define themselves as a health spa? Because, on their website, it all talks about is massage.
Correct. So the sign is foot spa. Foot spa could be, or the activity of a foot massage could be part of a health spa activity.
Well, maybe it's just, is it your suggestion it's just too vague?
Yeah.
Or
Very vague, yeah.
Very.
Yeah, and who am I to say, nope, that's not enough to be a health spa? You need this, 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 and this, and this to be considered a health spa.
Yeah,
But it's
well,
an activity of,
the only thing I would suggest is the word massage appears all over the place. I don't see health spa anywhere on their website.
and their schedule of fees was massages, be it foot, back. And that's probably where Amy's saying the health department, the county's not interested.
We can't even communicate, and there's stuff that I don't want to say right now publicly, but again, we have to have some guidelines so that we can't be targeting or singling out any particular place, but I want to make sure anything that we are allowing in our downtown, that we have some guidelines for whoever comes into our downtown. I want to ensure that the place that is coming in our downtown is a place that we have guidelines, is really what I'm saying. We have to, it can't be so broad. Right now, we are identifying that there's a situation. I'm bringing it to council. We have the power to tighten this up. So we need to figure, it's up to us. And this is an opportunity that we can put our heads together with everyone here and come up with a solution, because who knows what else could come up.
I believe it has to go farther than just the middle of town, even going out, outside of what's referred to as the central business district. Because it could start elsewhere, and agreeing with you, grow farther, so I think it shouldn't have any stipulations where.
So Bob, what is your suggestion for this committee to, we don't have, I know this is going to be a process for multiple things, but I'm just concerned of other things showing up, because it seems like, just like with the vape shops now, we've got other places that are wanting to come into our central business shops. And one of them being a very historic place that I don't think was the intent of anything like that at one time going to be put there. So again, what can we do to be proactive to make a first step?
Those two items, define health spa, and if it's potentially risky, put it in as a conditionally permitted use. So then planning commission could potentially vet it out. It will go to a public hearing because it's conditionally permitted.
So I think my personal thing right now, because there's going to be more things on this, but to get something started on the books, I think, I don't know what Matt and who else is now on my committee? I'm still having. Oh, I'm sorry. I was like, I had Rob here, and I'm like, wait a minute, it's not Rob. Who is it?
Still listed.
So Tyler, what are your thoughts? Would you like to get the, at least what Bob said, start moving forward, where we could at least have it as something that would have to go before planning commission, and then we can, it's something like a work in progress where, we can add to the ordinance and, do maybe a better definition along the way and keep something like this in our committee, but part of it, at least maybe move it along the first part where, it is, I can't even think of the word. I think I haven't eaten dinner tonight. So my brain is like gone from everything.
I think conditional use is
Yes.
the term Bob is.
Yeah,
So if
sorry.
If it is changed at this point, is there anything we can
No,
do to change the situation at this time?
right now, no.
Only in the future.
Can we make
My
the
opinion
downtown
is they won't be
business
around very long.
district all conditional use at this point, so everything has to be vetted?
No.
You don't want to do that. I know.
No.
Amy, I
I
found
mean, where are you going with this? That's why I'm
Mansfield
saying,
has
are you,
an ordinance for health spas.
Do they?
Yeah, I looked, our ordinance thing has all
Yeah, so
access
see-
to all these different cities, so
Yeah,
I'm
so-
finding them, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's up to you. I mean, I think it's something worth putting something forward.
Can I make another suggestion, though? And the reason I brought up the whole idea that they're advertising, they're defining themselves as a massage, whatever, parlor, I don't know if the right term. Maybe we need to focus on that.
That, I think, is where we would need to hit it first, because there's two types of massage from my very fast precursory research during the conversation we're having. So there's actually licensed, like, massage therapy, and that's regulated through the state of Ohio. There's a board for that, like you're saying. I think that if it's an actually licensed career, that is something I don't think we should fight for bringing into, this space. But for non-medical massage, I think that might be a better candidate for a conditional use permit. So I think if we want to put, like, we already have a definition of licensed massage, so we're good there. But for non-medical or non-licensed, I think that's where we could start having like a work session on getting those terms defined more clearly.
Because, I don't want to, somebody who, has a very good medical practice, and I know there are some close to the downtown that have great medical massages. But again, there are some things that are bothersome to members of the community, and I just want to make sure, I don't want to add anything in our downtown that's going to be detrimental either.
Yeah, it should be anywhere within the whole city limits.
Yeah. My only suggestion about focusing on massage, and I appreciate Mr. Maravich's comments, is that, what if a Planet Hollywood wanted to move, or Planet Fitness wanted to move into town? Are we going to make them go through a hearing with the planning commission? That's why, I would think that's why it's in our code now, because it's a pretty acceptable business, right? Why would we force them to go through that process?
But it's
But
not-
if it's a massage, if massage is their
Like
thing, I think.
Yeah, massage
defining it-
therapy, like
Yeah.
actually it's treating something.
Yeah, I think that would be a better approach. Because we don't want to overly regulate unnecessarily. You understand what I'm saying?
But if you
Ms.
clearly
Blackwell?
define, I'm reading Mansfield, it says health spa service means instruction, training, or assistance, physical culture, bodybuilding, exercising, reducing, figure development, or any other blah, blah, blah. I don't have to read the whole thing.
Right.
It kind of defines what it's supposed to be.
It narrows
It
that
does
scope,
not
you know.
include some other things.
Yeah,
But again, we can't prove that the other
Yeah.
things are going on
Sure,
either.
sure.
So I'm not pointing fingers at all, don't get me wrong. I'm just stating the facts that, we need to control the types of businesses that can possibly come into our downtown. And whatever way we can do to control or put a roadblock. Because of how everything is written now, there's nothing to stop anything. So we have an opportunity to do it. Cheryl, what's in your mind right now? You're smiling, so that must mean you're thinking of something.
I agree with absolutely non-desirable businesses. I just want to make sure, and that's why I brought up the fact that a lot of massage places, like Massage Envy.
Right.
Other legitimate health spas
Right.
provide body contouring.
Yeah.
Microdermabrasion, acupuncture. There's a lot of really good things
Absolutely.
that we would love to have in our downtown or in our city, period. I would like to figure out a way to limit it to the licenses, if we could find somebody that knew, or who monitors licenses for those types of businesses.
State Medical Board, yeah.
Right, but who locally could monitor to make sure that if a business comes into the city and they are a body contouring, a massage, Envy, whatever, that legitimately there's licenses and things to back that up without us being so restrictive and possibly turning away a legitimate business that wants to come in and we make it too difficult for a new business to want to come into town. I want to make sure that we are inviting to legitimate new businesses.
Yeah, we have businesses that just show up. What do you mean? I mean, they just show up, but we don't stop anybody. I mean, so this is what we're trying to do.
Right, I just wonder where's that balance and how do we make sure that the licenses, if they have other licenses in place, if everything's, legitimate and above board on that, absolutely open arms, come on in. But how do we balance that?
And that's why I ask if we are able to have our local health department involved in our ordinance, if we are able to include them as well as part of them applying for anything or, for a permit to open, how we can do that. Or, I know this is something obviously, we're not going to get out of here and pass tonight. I would have liked to have seen, at least at this point, making it conditional use.
See, now, that's where and I'm not, I understand everything people are saying, and the sentiment is completely understandable. But I think sometimes we get misdirected. So if we define a health spa as they do, this place can still go in. Because
Right.
they could just, they're not calling themselves a health spa. And by the way, the code that you're talking about, of permitted services, it says personal services including but not limited to the following. So massage is nowhere in here. If we just focus on health spa, then we will restrict the legitimate businesses by having to go
we
through
don't
a
wanna do
conditional
that, right.
permitting while letting the massage parlors come in the back door. So let's focus on what I think is the key issue, massage. That's what they're calling themselves. That's what we have the concerns about, right? And I think Mr. Maravich is perfectly on target. Let's define what we consider, the acceptable use of the term massage. And if we want to say it's conditionally permitted if they're not licensed, then it has to go through a vetting process. But I think let's take the health spa off the table because I think we're getting misdirected by terminology.
So should we rescope that to licensed massage therapy?
Well,
For that discussion.
I think that has to be a follow-up discussion.
Bob, what are your thoughts as far as going through the building process, for the permits and, having them come in?
We don't permit any business necessarily. We permit the space that they occupy as a certificate of occupancy. So if it's permitted or not permitted, or if it's conditionally permitted, if it's non-conforming use, then planning commission would have that right. But building department doesn't actually give a use permit, it comes from planning commission. But, so as Amy and I discussed it, I don't have teeth to tell them, you can't do this.
Right.
If you want me to tell them that, I need the teeth. So we've got to put it in the code. And I know it's not necessarily popular, but you know, it is what it is. And we can have a vape discussion next month too, if you guys are interested in.
I did, while we were talking, I did look up massage, and there is an ordinance, but it basically says that if they're advertising for the purposes of sexual activity, that would be against our code. So that's one thing we can keep our eyes on, you know, how are they advertising their services? And that would be something the police would obviously have to look into. But I don't know
mean,
that
you
we're
can
there
walk-
yet.
You can any of us can walk in and look at their schedule of fees and see, you can get a foot massage, you can get a body massage, you can get a forehand massage, you know, things like that. So again, that's right there. It might be on their website too, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's tricky business when the code basically says if it suggests that they're going to offer sexual activity, and I don't know how you
Well, and you know
define
how they're advertised, I mean, if you look
I'm
on
not saying
the-
they are doing that, by the way.
I'm,
I don't know.
again,
I mean,
there's.
that's subjective.
Yeah, but we, you know, we'll keep this in my committee if you guys are okay.
We can talk
I
about
think tonight, too much, this is important. I think it's something that we need to continue to have discussion and it goes with our long-range plan too. I mean, what can we do to protect our residents and our downtown businesses? And this, again, is something that our people who live here look at and watch and contact us about.
Thank you very much for bringing this.
And I did receive notification last week that Super Good did receive their notification from the state that they're going to be approved. They require some more information from the city, something signed. Did I pass that around to you guys already?
The mayor mentioned it during his remarks at our last meeting, and I saw the email. They basically have to provide contact information, and it has to be written.
Okay.
Have they done, Mayor, have they done that, by the way?
Not yet. Nobody said a word.
No, she's been trying to get ready, Darcy's been trying to get revised plans for planning commission at the end of the month.
For buying the house, they're going ahead and buying the house regardless, right?
No, they have what is the word I'm looking for? They have the right to purchase it, they delay it,
It's conditioned on
correct.
approval by
Conditioned based
planning
upon-
commission? Okay.
It's been a long night, Bob.
And, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And I believe she said they added a month, so they have another month before they close.
Well, any management updates? Jeff, anything you'd like to, anything going on with police?
He just wants to go home.
Okay, Mayor?
I wouldn't dare.
Okay. Okay, it is 8:42, and I'm going to adjourn the planning commission. Good night, everyone. And thank you for everyone that had input tonight.
Amy,